Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. Today we have what I feel like is probably the best Pool 2 Destroy deck list, and it's helped me climb on my Pool 2 account, which is at the end of Pool 2, so we are matching against some people from Pool 3, and it gets pretty rough around rank 70. If you guys have been stuck around this point and you have a lot of credits, I would say go ahead and just upgrade your cards. Go ahead and jump into Pool 3 and get a feel for it. But if you're wanting to stay at this level, then keep in mind that you are going to be in for some tough games. You're going to see some Pool 3 cards, usually only one or two, but you're still going to see them. You're still going to potentially be outpowered or outpositioned because of the access that they have. But for me, that didn't start until I hit around rank 70, and so after that, my climbing kind of slowed down. But with this deck list, I'm still able to keep tempo with a lot of those decks. I'm still able to outmaneuver a lot of them, and I've climbed up to 81 relatively quickly, and I intend to continue pushing with this deck until infinite. And so this deck leans all the way in to the destruction components, except for it takes out what, in my opinion, a lot of the destroy decks that are floating around now, what they recommend. It takes out a couple of the things that I feel like are weaker cards. So a lot of Pool 2 destruction decks run Angel. I feel like he is just a lackluster card. Even if you get the trigger and he comes out of your deck, yes, it thins your deck technically, but I don't feel like he adds that much value. We're not digging in and hoping for any particular draw, for the most part, from this list. And so pulling him out of your deck adds 2 power, and then if you later do a Killmonger, you're just going to destroy it anyways. So it doesn't feel like, to me, it adds a lot of value for us. So I went ahead and cut him. Another one that a lot of Pool 2 deck lists run is Wolverine. And Wolverine, I'm typically very critical over Wolverine. So he is a 2-cost, 3-power card. You throw him on the board, and then if you destroy him, what happens? He stays on the board at 3 power. He doesn't buff up. He doesn't change. He just bounces to a random location. And so you still paid the entry fee of 2 energy for him, just for him to remain on the board. And so for me, I'd rather throw something like Mr. Sinister into the raft. That way we can control what and where our power push is. Mr. Sinister will get buffed up twice from Nova, or sometimes we use it as Carnage fodder to buff him up further. And overall, just Wolverine just doesn't feel like he fits the mold. He does do well if being destroyed. If there's a space throne, if there's a bar with no name, dropping Wolverine is a liability. And so I like the consistency of Mr. Sinister, so I took Wolverine and Angel both out, and I added in Enchantress. We still have Shang-Chi, so we have 2 ways to counter the opponent. So if they're running a Devil Dino deck and they drop 1 Devil Dino and 5 and they had used Moon Girl, we can actually counter both of their Devil Dinos here. We can Enchantress one, we can Shang-Chi the other. We have a lot of upside from having these options, and then even if we don't draw into both, it increases the chance that we have one answer to that really strong push from those Devil Dino decks. Now, the rest of the deck list I feel like is a pretty standard Pool 2 destruction deck. I added in Chavez. Since we took out Angel, Chavez helps us draw into our destroy components more consistently early on. And then if we can set up, sometimes we play Chavez, sometimes we would rather set up for a Shang-Chi or Enchantress, but most of the time we can maneuver our hand so that we can clear up and use Chavez on the last turn, unless we're needing to push power into multiple lanes. And so in this list, there's a few cards that benefit from being destroyed. We have Bucky Barnes, who turns into the Winter Soldier. We have Sabretooth, who returns to your hand as a 0 cost. This allows us some flexibility on that final turn, so we can efficiently choose where that power push should go. And then Nova, whenever he gets destroyed, he will buff up the rest of your cards, but that's about it. Your options for what gets benefited from destruction tools is pretty limited in Pool 1 and Pool 2, but it's still a very viable list. So early on, we're looking to do something like a Bucky Barnes into a Sabretooth, into a Deathlok, or into a Nova and a Deathlok. To clear that lane, return the Sabretooth to our hand, buffed up to 5, and then on 5, we can look for a spot for a Hobgoblin. On 6, we can drop Sabretooth and one of our counter cards, or Chavez. Or we always have Killmonger as a way to counter any like Zoo decks, or anytime an opponent is leaning a little too heavily on 1-cost cards, we can counter those with our Killmonger. Now, as we get into Pool 3, there are going to be several cards you can add in pretty easily to upgrade this list. And so we have the Hood. He's going to be a great card to be destroyed. He will create a powerful 6-power demon in our hand, and we can destroy him to mitigate the downside of the -2 power. And so overall in destruction list, the Hood is typically really strong. We typically want to start subbing out some of our less impactful cards. And so first up on the chopping block is going to be Hobgoblin. He's late game. He's hard to use in the late game. So Hobgoblin is one of the first cuts. And then Sabretooth, as you start unlocking some of these upgrades, becomes a little bit clunkier to use because you have more impactful turn 3 and turn 4 plays rather than playing your Sabretooth onto the board. And then Mr. Sinister is another early cut because he just doesn't offer that much value. And then in addition to that, we can cut Forge relatively easily. In this list, Forge will buff up either our Mr. Sinister or our Sabretooth. So as soon as we lose one of those cards, we probably want to cut Forge for something a little bit stronger in regards to destruction. The next pool 3 upgrade that you can add in is going to be a Deadpool. And until you get some of the deeper pool resources, so typically Venom along with Deadpool and then a few other cards, usually Deadpool is going to be a little bit lackluster, but he can still snowball incredibly well if you happen to draw into the right draw, if you draw into him early. But I typically wouldn't try to build around Deadpool until you have some of the deeper pool 3 resources for the most part. And then next up we have Venom. Venom is going to be one that feels like you should replace Deathlok pretty early on. But for the most part, unless it's a very particular deck, Deathlok is going to be more value most of the time. Unless there is something where you are really snowballing that power level, then most of the time your Deathlok will have more value. But Venom becomes incredibly valuable in your Deadpool deck in giving you that additional kill trigger so that you can continue cycling your Deadpool in and buffing him up further each and every turn. And then next we have Wave. While not necessarily a destruction card, Wave is pivotal in the high-end tier 1 destruction deck lists for one of the destruction cards that I'll cover in just a second, Death. And so then our next upgrade is Death. And Death can do some really crazy things, and she is the reason why a destruction and destroy decklist is competitive in tier 1 all the way up through rank 600. Some of the top end players run Death really consistently to climb. And that is because as cards get destroyed, she becomes cheaper. Now at 9 cost, this still feels pretty steep. You're typically only going to be able to destroy 3 or 4 cards throughout the game, but her interaction with Wave will reduce her base cost down to 4, and then for every card that you destroyed from there, it reduces further. And so destroying 2 cards and dropping Wave on 5 allows you to drop 2 cards. You can drop your Death and 1 additional card on that final turn, which allows you to outpower and outpace your opponent, and the reason that those deck lists can shine. And so now taking a look at a couple of the end game destroy builds that you can aim for. First up we have the Death Wave Deathpool deck, and this one is incredibly solid. It adds in Hulkbuster as a way to start elevating your Deadpool early, and then it keeps your other destruction cards, your Carnage, your Bucky Barnes, your Venom, your Killmonger, as well as your Deathlok, all combined together to make sure that you have as many kill triggers as possible to continue triggering your Deadpool, to clear out your downside of your Bucky Barnes or your Hood to generate some additional upside. And then for each card that you destroy, your Death is going to get reduced. If you kill at least 2 cards, you can do a Wave on 5. That allows you to do a Death and a Taskmaster, a Death and a Deadpool. Or if you don't do Wave, you can do a Deadpool and a Taskmaster on the final turn, and Taskmaster will copy the power of the card that you played immediately before Taskmaster's own reveal triggers to generate some insane last turn plays. And then next is the tier 1 Bayro deck. And so it's Bay Arrow. It is essentially a Death Wave deck, but it uses Arrow as that last turn kind of surprise factor. If you destroy the other cards, you drop Wave, and then you can drop Death and Arrow on that final turn. Arrow will reposition the 1 card that your opponent was able to drop on that final turn, allowing you to outpower them in whatever lane you drop your Death into, and forcing them to pull that last turn, that last immediate effort card into a lane that is not advantageous for them. But that is a rundown of the deck list and upgrades that you can look forward to as you move into Pool 3. Let's go ahead and jump into a couple of games, and I'll show you how to navigate it. Alright, so starting off, for reference before we jump into the game, we're starting at rank 80 with 7 additional cubes. We accidentally queued in on the wrong deck when we switched back to this account, which ended up costing us a couple of cubes. And so first up we have Rytuos, and in our starting hand we do have Nova. Avengers Compound will restrict all cards to be played in this lane on turn 5, and so maybe we look at doing a Hobgoblin in that location. If we can find a win condition there, then if they have enough space, then a Hobgoblin play is going to be pretty impactful. We're not going to get to turn 5, so we're going to end the game after turn 4. So I'm okay with this. We do have Killmonger that can come down, destroy their Korg, or any other low-cost cards that they drop. We're actually going to push Carnage just by himself over into the Avengers compound lane. Next turn, we might drop a Deathlok into the far right lane by himself. Never mind. So we're going to do a Killmonger this turn. Deathlok is going to be our turn 4 drop. Unfortunately, I would have liked to drop Deathlok this turn, Killmonger on the last turn as a kind of a surprise play. You can't always get what you want. So Iceman hits our Deathlok, disrupts his curve just a little bit, which is fine. That's perfectly fine. We're going to destroy their Iceman, their Korg. We're going to pop our Nova. We have a 4-power Killmonger, which actually gets sent over into the Strange Academy, which is just also fine. And so now they have to swing 2 of the locations, but we have Deathlok coming down. It wouldn't make sense for them to retreat at this point because they're not risking any additional cubes seeing the game out. As soon as they stayed after the snap, they're not risking anything additional seeing this one play all the way through. So let's go ahead and do the Deathlok. I don't think they're going to be able to swing 2 locations. So they changed TVA with Storm. Interestingly enough. So now it comes down to where this Killmonger goes. Right now we're tied in the flooded location. We can actually push the Hobgoblin over into the Avengers compound lane. I don't know if they have an Odin, then we do have to worry, which this could be an Odin trigger, which Juggernaut, of course, is a pool 3 card. So we are pool 2, but since we're so high rank and our MMR comes into play, we've had a rank reset. We do see quite a few pool 3 cards, but it's still early on. So I think we send the Hobgoblin. If this is like a white tiger, then we have to be really, really concerned about an Odin play. At that point, we would retreat. So it's a Jessica Jones, so it doesn't look like they're going to want to play into the Avengers compound lane this turn. So our Killmonger, unfortunately, goes into the Avengers compound lane. That extends our lead here. They're going to go up to 0 power in this lane. We will have a 7 power lead. As long as we don't get beaten by 7 power here, then we win. And so looking at the odds, being able to tell that they were massively outpowered here, they go ahead and retreat, which is respectable. Let's go ahead and we'll take that win. That will bump us up by 2. We'll take that win. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. See if we can get back to where we started before we accidentally queued up with the wrong deck, got greedy, and then lost 4 cubes. All right, so next up we have Grady. We are going to go ahead and play our Nova into Washington, D.C. on the first turn. We'll see what the next locations are. But as this play is turning out, we have a couple of new channel members to welcome in. During our lunch live stream for today, we had several people join us as channel members. And so we had Koshik, we had Jake, we had Kello, we had Meme Goblin, we had The Heat Flow, and FM Cheese all join us as channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you for supporting me and supporting the content. I am so very glad to have you guys here. And so let's go ahead and they play Nightcrawler, which is going to be able to be targeted by our Killmonger on one of those final turns. I think we just tempo drop Carnage here. It feels kind of bad not destroying anything, but we don't have a great turn 3 play. We don't know if we have a Sabretooth that's going to come in, and I think we need to continue pushing power. Now, they have 3 1-cost cards on the board, which looks incredibly promising to me. Let's go ahead and snap off of that. I am very happy to snap into this if they do somehow do an armor. We have Enchantress to counteract the armor. We can take that away. They have Nakia. And so this one might be one of the higher level bots maybe, but that is fine. We have a really strong counter to these 1-cost cards. They do have Nakia, but I think we're okay. They moved their Nightcrawler over. He is now safe. They have Hellcow. If we draw into our Shang-Chi, we can easily destroy the Hellcow as well. We're going to go ahead and destroy our Bucky Barnes. That will get the bonus from the Washington, D.C. lane, which is why we placed him there. And then Deathlok is big as well. So this is a really strong lane. Now we could do Shang-Chi here. We can do Shang-Chi, or we could do Hobgoblin to try and sneak that into one of the lanes. Maybe we try to sneak it over here. They only have 1 card in hand, so let's go ahead and lean all the way into Xandar. I don't know that they're going to be able to push or compete with us in Washington, D.C. If we can send them a negative Hobgoblin, they're not going to be able to hold their own. The Hobgoblin is going to go over here. Right now, we're tied. We do have the condition to destroy this card, but I think what we do instead, they have 1 card in hand. We know that unless it's something that can go wide, even if it's the largest card in the world, by playing Killmonger here, we will have the lane win. We will have the power advantage in this lane. we'll have the power advantage here, and we already have the power advantage here. So knowing that they only have one resource to drop, I think it's going to be in our best interest to spread out our power, do a little bit what seems like a weaker play. We could always get the guaranteed trigger of Hell Cow, but then what if they dropped a 10 power, 12 power Hulk here? We're not going to be able to compete with this lane, and so at least this way we are competitive in all of the lanes, knowing they only have one card that they can drop here. And so it does look like they are going to play a card into Xandar. We do destroy their Ant-Man. We destroy their Blade. They're probably going to win Xandar as a result, but we win the left and the far right lane without much issue or any worries. We are able to take in those 4 cubes. That now bumps us up to 81.3. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next game. All right, so next up we have Cyphrin, and the raft location is pretty cool for us. So we have Forge, we have Mr. Sinister. They do get the early jump in the Nova drop, and so they might be able to outpace and out-tempo us there, which is a little bit unfortunate. Now we have to decide if it's worth it to lean into the raft or if we try to lean out of the location. So they snapped off of the raft drop. They may have a Mr. Sinister as well, and that will fill up 2 of their slots. They'll be able to cap it out on that next turn, and we're not going to be able to outpace them in that manner. So if it does look like, ooh, so the Angela, I wonder if they're going to be able to fill it up next turn or not. So the Nidavellir location is pretty big. I think we're going to go with Mr. Sinister into Kiln. We're going to try to outpace them in Kiln. If they cap this one out this turn, then they have the free 6-cost card that they might be able to make advantage of in the Kiln location. But we're going to hope that they invest here. They don't quite get there. Oh, they do have the Mr. Sinister. So they are going to be able to get there. They'll get the free 6-cost card. They have 1 turn to try to utilize it in the Kiln location to outpace us. What we're hoping for is that we can outpace them, that we can win this one, and then we can look for a counterplay with the Shang-Chi in the Nidavellir location. That is our hope, our strategy, our goal. Let's go ahead and play Sabretooth. That's going to be the same thing as dropping Enchantress, but at least Enchantress over here, if they do end up dropping an ongoing card, we'll be able to make usage of it over here. And so let's drop the Sabretooth. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off. We're going to see if they invest heavily into Kiln. Hope maybe they have an Infinite and they have to skip this turn. As long as they have initiative going into that last turn, we can do a counter Shang-Chi play. And so if they skip here, then we're not going to be able to do that. So they do a Lizard and they do Chavez, which hurts us so much. Oh my gosh. It's huge. So the Chavez was their free 6-cost card. I'm going to go with Bucky Barnes into a Deathlok into the raft location. And then we might be relying on a Shang-Chi play for the final turn. So Gamora, we know, is within Shang-Chi range because of the Nidavellir location. So we're actually going to push for this lane. Right now we have 11. If they destroy their Nova with a Killmonger, that's going to bring them down to 7, but it's going to buff them up by 3. So they will be 10 power. So we can actually maintain the lead here. And then now all we need to do is hope that they don't drop much more than, as long as it's within Shang-Chi range, then we should be fine here. So if they do an Odin, we're fine. So they would have to drop 2 3-cost cards or less. So a Killmonger here would actually destroy Nova and bump up into the +9 category. And so I think we're fine. I don't know if we have snapped or not, but I don't want to snap into the final turn because I don't want to scare them off. And so let's go ahead and just let this one play out. We are going to... In this turn, we should be pretty comfortable. A Hulk is fine. That is Shang-Chi-able. We are going to win Nidavellir with 8 total power. We win the raft location with 11 power. We outpace them in the left and the right. Even though they beat us to the raft location, we were able to outmaneuver and outpower them, bringing us up to 81.7. And so with that, that is 3 games played. That is 3 games won. We are going to go ahead and end the video after that one. I'm going to be playing this one more on stream for our lunch live stream at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time here on YouTube. If you want to see more of this deck in action, then go ahead and either jump in and watch the stream, or you can watch it on demand from our channel section under the live tab. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.